Welcome back. You are watching KTN Weekend Express. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, this is what we are talking about at this point, the National Special Plan for the year 2015 to 2045. That's about 30 years. And we just want to know what exactly this is. What will this mean for you here in Nairobi, in any city, down at the county level, in arid and semi-arid areas? What advantages does it have for you? What will this mean for you in 2045? How will this country look like in 2045 if what they seek to undertake works? Now, joining me in studio to talk about this, I will start with my immediate here. We have Titus Musungu. He is the Assistant Director of the Department of Physical Planning at the Ministry of Lands. Thank you very much, Titus, for coming in.
Thank you, too.
We also have Zachary Maritim, who is a Spatial Planning Manager at the World Wildlife Fund, or WWF, if you like. Thank you so much for coming in as well.
Thank you.
As well as Dr. Lawrence Esho, who is the Chairperson of the Kenya Institute of Planners. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. And for my introduction, I'm already seeing some feedback coming here. Everyone is asking, what exactly is the National Special Plan? I'll start with you, Doctor.
Okay. Thank you very much. The National Spatial Plan is a program that really says how we should use our territorial space as a country. It is always taken for granted that we prepare plans, economic development plans and things like that, but we never quite ask ourselves how much territory do we have as a resource.
Yeah.
It is called a special plan because it's about land on the one hand, but land as space. So how much space do we have in Kenya? Much of our development is located along a very small corridor, which is the Mombasa-Malaba corridor, and most of it is really in central and western Kenya, most of the population. But we have the entire north unexploited, and that's some of the that's what the plan assists us to do, to see how can we open up the territory of this republic, including our exclusive economic zone, which is 200 nautical miles east of our shoreline, for exploitation, for effective exploitation, but in a manner that ensures that our development is sustainable. Yes.
So why are we doing this now, Zachary?
I think this is an opportunity for the country to be able to get it right. Like Dr. Esho has said, we have got the land and the resources there upon it, and the land as defined by the Constitution, the resources on the land, under the land, in the sea, in the air, and all these spaces that we have got. And therefore, we are doing this now because we've tried it in the past and it hasn't worked, and it's an opportunity that we have given by the Constitution to be able to get it right in planning our spaces and distributing our development in a manner that does not marginalize the communities. If you look at the past, there are lots of areas in this country that have been marginalized for one reason or the other, but this is the opportunity to be able to get it right and to be able to carry forward sustainability principles into the development of this country.
We're definitely getting into what this would mean for the people in semi-arid and arid areas, the marginalized, as you say. But to you, Titus, there's definitely a need that necessitated this action to be taken. But currently, what is the status of planning in this country?
Well, let me first say that from a very basic point of view, other than saying that the plan is territorial, it sort of presents a land budget for the country, and it is futuristic. How do we want to use the land available to us? And that land includes what is dry, which we call brown, and what is wet, which includes the ocean, which is part of our space. The definition of land, the Constitution has also expanded it, so we are also dealing with what is below that land, and what is above it, and what is on it. What necessitated its being done? First and foremost, the immediate reason was to land, to put a geographic context to the Vision 2030.
Yeah.
Because Vision 2030 is speaking broadly about the economic outlook for the country, but we need to put that outlook into fruition by landing it on our given parcel of land, which is our so-called our territorial space. There are many advantages, as you have mentioned, marginalized areas.
Yeah.
There are areas which have other varied potentials. But from a spatial planning point of view, there isn't any space in this country that is useless. I think all our land has potential. And even those areas that are dry, they have potential, a lot of potential for ranching. They have a lot of potential for tourism. And there are also the areas which have a lot of natural resources, particularly in terms of oil and other resources, some of which we haven't even explored and established. So generally speaking, we are looking towards using our land in a very optimal way and providing through that land opportunity for industrialization and opportunity for modernizing our agriculture and opportunity for industrialization,
Yes.
which will end up providing employment and income not only for our youth presently, but also for the rest of the country.
So
generally.
it is something Kenyans should look forward to.
It is something Kenyans should look forward to, and it's also going to unlock further planning by counties, planning of the county territory, and also planning for the urban areas within those counties, which will further clarify whatever the aspirations of these plans
Yes.
are.
Yes. Speaking of counties, Dr. Esho,
Yes.
down at the county levels, this is a new concept, and so many things are coming from the national government down to the counties. I believe this is the national one, but we will also have county special plans. Do the county governments, those involved, do they know what is expected of them from this? And what are some of the things that county governments should look out for in terms of this plan?
Yes, a number of counties have embarked on preparing county special plans, which is very important. But what was lacking before was the national framework within which to anchor their own special plans. Because we are one country, as we say,
Yes.
48 governments, and all planning must be harmonized. Now, the national special plans gives us that opportunity in which then county governments now step down the aspirations of the national special plan into their own plans, and in such a way that there will be no conflict between programs that are adopted by one county and programs that are adopted by the neighboring county. It is very important that we have a WWF here because there is also a bigger angle to this. You're aware that we have regional development authorities or regions in this country, like the Lake Basin Development Authority. We have the Tana and Athi River and our Sonyiro. Resource regions, we call them. And these resource regions do not follow county boundaries, isn't it? So the plan gives us the broader context within which counties then can plan their own small context, but in such a way that they do not end up compromising the integrity of the whole. So for instance, there are several counties which, you remember the whole argument about water, the water tunnel. There's a big argument there that, you know, the water is not only for the use of Nairobi people, but that water was ultimately going to go down to the east, to counties in the lowlands, in the plateau areas. And therefore, there was need for a concerted effort that involves all those counties in coming together and brainstorming. How do we achieve this? How do we achieve water for Nairobi, but at the same time not diminishing the opportunity of counties in the lowlands getting the same water? So counties should look out for this plan because in a sense it protects them and gives them a basis for negotiating between and amongst counties and also with the national government on that.
All right.
Note.
Maritime, we've had so many conflicts. We have the human-wildlife conflict. We have conflict over pasture, what is happening in some of the pastoralist communities. Most of this happens because of lack of a plan. When we talk about urbanization, we immediately think about slums. So how will this plan resolve such conflicts, these modern-day conflicts that we have?
Yeah, this plan is really coming at a critical time when the conflicts are aggravated, if you will. And it's a broad definition of the thematic areas that are key to actually operationalizing the zoning out of important land uses that are going to ensure that these conflicts are minimized. At WWF, of course, we are a conservation organization, and we are already intervening in several areas, key areas like the Mau Mara Serengeti landscape and looking at the coastal Kenya landscapes. And these conflicts have arisen because of the reason that we have limited resources, and yet the wants are unlimited. And therefore, I always say that if it was not because of conservation, then there would be no reason to plan. Why do I say this? It's because these are natural resources which are limited and which we must plan around. And the reason that those conflicts have arisen is because there are encroachments into land uses by one land use into another land use. For example, you would find agriculture and expanding into areas that are supposed to be wildlife areas, and therefore causing conflict. And a lot of times we would want to say that a lion has killed somebody because because the lion has invaded the homesteads. But we always forget that it is because maybe the homesteads have invaded the space that belonged to the lions, and therefore in that conflict, human death occurs. And therefore this spatial planning, which rightly like Dr. Esho has pointed out, has gone into, is at the national level, and it is being brought down to the county level to actually zone out the areas and to define the clear land uses and the management principles that must be put in place in order to ensure that the management regimes for the different land uses do not conflict with the other, is going to be carried out by the counties. Therefore, the WWF is working at the moment in 4 counties, Kwale, Lamu, Bomet, and Narok, because these are some of the priority areas that WWF has identified to be able to prioritize and to be able to work and to be able to at least pilot and be able to see how these principles of spatial planning can be undertaken. And therefore, the conflicts can be managed by defining and ensuring that there is no encroachment of one land use into another land use. And that way, then you'll be able to minimize this conflict. And you do this at policy level, which is partly what the National Spatial Plan has done and what the county special plans are going to be doing. And of course, also providing the legislation, the regulations, and the guidelines that are going to ensure that the administration of these different land uses ensures harmony. WWF's vision, for example, WWF's vision is to ensure a world in which nature exists in harmony with humans, and therefore conflicts are minimized. And so this planning is a concrete step in ensuring that those conflicts are going to really be minimized.
All right. Titus, there's a Kenyan somewhere who's thinking, I've been told for a while that I'm encroaching in some land, that I'm living in land that is designated, say, for road or rail or for any infrastructure. Do you foresee these challenges when it comes to realigning, like you say, that everyone would occupy space that is meant for them, like a maritime is saying, you would not live somewhere where the lions should be living, or vice versa? Do you foresee such challenges with the Kenyans who've lived somewhere for years and now you're getting to a point where you're telling them, wait a minute, you're not supposed to live here because of A, B, C, D?
Not immediately, and not as a result of the National Spatial Plan. It broadly defines how we should use our land, but the specifics of how the land would be used will be clarified by the county spatial plans and the urban plans and the action area plans that will be done for our rural areas. So that sort of worry shouldn't be there. But it provides some clarity relating to land which is not available for development, land which should ordinarily be conserved. And if that land is conserved, then the quality of life for people generally would improve, because these areas which we end up encroaching in play very important ecosystem services roles and functions. Like, for instance, the water towers. If we allowed people to encroach there, then of course, in the final analysis, even the livelihood you are trying to get within the other areas will be negatively impacted. But to answer your question directly, it will not result from this sort of output, but there is a possibility of realigning the lands, the land uses, and population settlements as a result of the plan. And it's a process that is gradual. It is not a revolutionary process. It's an evolutionary process, because we are also looking at the trends which indicate that a lot of our people are moving to the urban areas. So as they move to the urban areas, this policy provides strategies for anticipating and accommodating, and of course freeing land for agriculture and freeing land for nature.
All right.
Yes.
Dr. Esho, what are some of the things we've gotten wrong over the years in terms of development planning that this plan seeks to fix now?
I'd just like to give some background on where we've come from as a country in terms of how we've structured our territorial space. You remember that we were once colonized, and the interest of the colonizing power was to get resources out of this country. So one step they made was to zone the land in the country into the White Highlands, and then, of course, the native reserves. So they annexed huge territory within the interior of the country for purposes of production, export-oriented production, to support the Industrial Revolution in Europe. Now, but at the same time, they also asked themselves one question once they got to Mombasa: how do we open up and access this territory? Hence, the Northern Corridor. The Northern Corridor is a creation of the colonial plan itself for the country. And they built the railway, the highway, okay, and then every 100 miles along that corridor, they set up an urban settlement. So if you look, you have Mombasa, you have Voi, you keep coming, Nairobi, Nakuru, all the way to Malaba, or to Kisumu, if you want to look at it that way. Now, the mistake we've made is that was not our plan as Kenyans. That was the plan of the colonial master.
We found ourselves in that plan.
Yes, and we've taken that plan as if it was a good plan. We've never challenged it. So in the last 20 years, what has happened is that we began to challenge that notion that this is the best way we can live on our land and exploit our land. As Plana Musungu just explained, that the Vision 2030, you remember it very well, introduced a new corridor. That's the Lapset corridor.
Yes.
Because it was informed by the belief that there is no land in this country that is marginal in all this, in every sense. There is a way in which each and every tract of land in this country can be activated. It has potential, and we have failed to look at that in the past. Look at, in the last 15 years is when we've discovered oil in this country. Yeah. We discovered that we have immense water resources in the north, isn't it? We also discovered that there's a large proportion of the population that actually inhabits those northern territories, and they are doing something while inhabiting those territories. But we've never done anything to assist them actualize their activities and also contribute to the national cake. That's part of what this plan intends to do, to open up all territory in this country for purposes of our sustainable economic exploitation for the benefit of the people. In the same sense, also, we have never asked ourselves, we have behaved like an island in this country. For a long time, we had a good road, all the way to Arusha and to our border at Namanga. But was it the same on our side? No. There was a road always from Addis Ababa to our border at Moyale. Did we connect to it? No, isn't it? Now we've changed in terms of consciousness. We've realized that it's important for ourselves to position ourselves in the region for economic competitiveness. Now, for us to be able to do so, then we must connect to these countries. Hence, the massive investments in infrastructure that connects us to the region, including the SGR that is currently being done, or reinforcing the existing corridor so that it can perform better the role which it performs currently. Much of the benefit we'll get from the SGR is really regional trade, enhancing our regional trade and making ourselves more competitive in the region. So this plan, in essence, will help right some of the wrongs of the past, and also will, as I've said, will help us focus on every inch of space in this country, realize that every space has got potential, and then it tells us how then to go about realizing that, harnessing that potential. Yes.
Maritim, for people who've lived in marginalized areas for years, the same areas that we have termed as marginalized in the, say, 70s are the same areas we term as marginalized even today. In the year 2017, what does this plan mean for the people who live there in, say, 20 to 30 years, if this plan goes as you have planned? What do we expect to see? What are some of the changes we expect to see in these areas?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, this plan has really come at the right time and to correct the wrongs that we have done in the past. Looking at the different areas, this plan has covered the different thematic areas, looking at the water issues, looking at the forest issues, looking at the rangelands issues and the potential that these different areas have got to offer. And these areas which have for a long time been marginalized, like Titus said earlier, are areas which are turning out today to be areas of huge economic potential. The categorization that is going to go into the usefulness of these areas. Each of the services, each of the areas that we are looking at, if you look at the rangelands, there is a certain critical ecological or environmental service that it provides. In the past, we have encroached into the wetlands. We have destroyed all the wetlands. There are very few remaining. We have encroached into the water towers. We have degazetted and deforested huge chunks of, looking at the Mau, for example, and several other places. But we have left out areas, for example, in the northeastern part of this country, that are really of huge potential. Dr. Esho has mentioned that we are now discovering that there is potential for energy sources in terms of petroleum and gas that is being discovered in these areas. And one of the things that this plan has got to be able to do is to delineate the extent of the urban areas, so that these urban areas are zoomed in and planned correctly to be able to provide the urban services that it needs to provide, so that populations can be able to move into these areas with services well planned, and then they can free up the areas which are for the rangelands, for livestock production, areas for agriculture, for agricultural production. They can free up these areas which are today being fragmented unsustainably, so that we can have agriculture, irrigated agriculture. There is huge potential for water availability in those areas which were considered unproductive before. And therefore, with these areas providing this level of productivity, and if you can carry out this irrigated agriculture in these areas, and then be able to feed these settlements that are considered the growth areas and which have been identified in this plan as key areas where our populations can concentrate and be provided with services. If you drive along any of the major roads today in this country, you'll be shocked at the kind of environmental disaster that is happening out there. You would look at how towns are growing along the highways and growing indiscriminately and planned, and therefore completely impossible to be able to provide services for these people. If you want to provide utility services, for example, electricity and water, for people that are just distributed haphazardly and in an ad hoc manner, then it is going to be extremely expensive and difficult for the infrastructure to be able to serve those people. But if you delineate these areas as urban areas and cities and concentrate in planning them well, and then you plan the regions or you plan the countryside in order to be able to provide those services, the agriculture, the food productivity, then you will be able to really develop sustainably. The principle is to be able not to exploit resources unsustainably. Charcoal burning, for example, is a really strong case that is happening and destroying some of those woodland savanna areas. And these are critical areas which we need to be able to protect because they have a unique ecosystem service that they provide. So it is not only, when you talk about conservation, for example, people immediately think about national parks and the wildlife that is there. But there are critical, ecologically sensitive areas. Look at the riparian land, the riverine areas, the community forest areas, which are providing, if you look at some forests, for example, if you go to a place like Narok, and there are forests there, the dryland forests, which are refuge for livestock during dry seasons. And you must be able to protect these areas, not just because of the economic value that they present, but because of the use by communities that these areas present.
Titus, what are some of the pieces of legislation that you would need to support this plan?
Yeah, maybe before I go into that, I could delve a bit into what my colleagues have spoken about. First and foremost, on the issue of economic competitiveness, which is important from a regional perspective, I think this plan is quite important for that particular purpose. Because apart from proposing the corridors that need to be developed for us to efficiently connect to our neighbors, we are also thinking about how to develop our urban areas in such a manner that they act as magnets for investment and for people, including knowledge workers who may want to work from Kenya, and therefore make this country competitive. In as far as marginalization is concerned, it's a function of so many factors, including geography. And from this plan's perspective, there isn't a single place in this country that would be inaccessible. And it is sort of going to mitigate the geographical distance, like for instance, from Mandera to Nairobi, so that those places also have central places being developed in those areas which mitigate marginalization from the geographical perspective. But other than from the geographical perspective, then from the economic perspective, it is seeking to unlock the resource potential of those areas so as to again mitigate that marginalization. We have two economies in this country. We have the old economy, which the colonialists developed through the Northern Corridor. Sometimes people call it the Lunatic Express. But we now have a whole new economy being developed in the north, and it is based on factors that are similar and dissimilar to the one we have developed and which we have divided in the northern area. But in as far as the question you've asked me in terms of legislation and policy, some of the policies that we must make, because I think we start with the policies before we go into legislation. We need a planning policy, a wide, broad planning policy, which creates a context through which this plan could be implemented. Some of those policies, suggestions or directives include how to resource planning institutions so that the further planning that is required to bring this planning into effect is actually done. We also need a legislation to enable planning to happen and to be enforced.
Yeah.
We require legislation for purposes of enforcement and regulation. And currently, one of the legislations we really need to pass is the Physical Planning Act, which is, I think, currently before the Senate. Because if it isn't there, then we will not have a way of ensuring or enforcing the planning at the levels of the county to ensure that this plan gets to fruition. There are other supporting legislations which also need to be strengthened.
Maritime, you deal directly with conservation policies and legislation that you would like to be put in place to support this plan.
Yeah, one of the acts that already exists and that is really critical for operationalizing this plan is the Environmental Coordination and Management Coordination Act, MCA, CAP 387. That is a key document for being able to work out the environmental issues that are mentioned in this policy document. There is also, of course, the Wildlife Act, because there are wildlife areas which are provided for, and the wildlife corridors, which are critical in providing the space that the wildlife will need to be able to migrate and move from one place to the other. And of course, there are sets of guidelines. WWF has been able to support NEMA to come up with the strategic environmental assessment guidelines, which guidelines have been very useful in terms of strategic environmental assessments that govern large infrastructure projects that are going to be coming up around implementation of this document. We've spoken about the corridors, like the LAPSET corridor, the SGR corridor, and many other corridors that are going to be coming up. And these development corridors are going to be going through certain environmentally sensitive areas where there is requirement for environmental impact assessment.
All right, as we wind up quickly, Dr. Esho, this opens up to a lot of politicking. Obviously, you expect that. How do you plan to rise above it quickly before we
About the politics?
Yes.
Actually, there is no politics about this plan, because what it essentially does is it facilitates development.
All right.
So I don't see any reason as to why anyone would be against a development facilitation framework. So if we say that it will open up new territory for the benefit of all, and help us harness the resources for the benefit of all, that's what all Kenyans are looking at.
So essentially what the three of you are telling me is in 2045 we will not have slums, we will not have traffic jams, we will not have poor drainage, we will have marginalized communities 2 seconds each. Is that what we are saying?
That is the vision.
Quickly.
That is the vision.
That is the vision. And it's important to have a vision.
All right.
And to dream big.
So, Dr. Esho, you're itching to say something.
Well, a plan is as good as its implementation. So the next critical step is for the government to allocate resources, adequate resources to realize this plan, and also for county governments to contribute by stepping down the plan into actionable plans at the local level. That's the only way we will realize those aspirations.
All right.
I think there's an expression of intent, and therefore to be able to get it, the citizens must hold the politicians to account.
All right.
In order to get
and we shall.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in. We have Titus Musungu, Assistant Director, the Department of Physical Planning at the Ministry of Lands. Zachary Maritime, he is a Special Planning Manager at the WWF Kenya, as well as Dr. Lawrence Esho is the Chairman at the Kenya Institute of Planners. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in. And there you have it, all the information you need on the National Special Plan. And as I say, it goes down to the county levels as well. So in 2045, hoping you will be alive, we'll be asking you guys this question. All right, we'll take a short break. Coming back, another conversation on turning passion into paper. Don't go too far. This is KTN Morning Express.